levels of cosmology, we can visualize this shift, this major shift in the way humans see ourselves, in the way we perceive ourselves in our world from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. Okay, it's a very important presentation that will help you bring together everything else that we've talked about in relation to this period. Okay, so next. So we start with a map of the Ptolemaic world. Okay? This is a map of the cosmology, the way people imagined the Earth before all the scientific revolution that eventually got the idea accepted that the Earth revolves around the sun, that it's the third planet, that it's constantly in motion, and that the center is the sun and not the Earth. Okay? At that time, they also thought that, see, the Euro-Asian African people, they had a sense of this part of the world, but then they didn't know what happened here. They didn't know where Africa ended, and they just had no idea how this ended either. So that was their world. Okay, that's what they knew about the world, and they were in the same way that they felt that this was an immobile center of the system that ended with the ninth sky of the fixed stars, and then there was God. They also felt that this was not moving. Okay? Next. So this came from Ptolemy, who was an Egyptian mathematician of the 2nd century before, after Christ. And at that time, this cosmology was not really a problem because nobody had the means to explore what was not represented. So what difference did it make anyway? It was not a problem. Okay? Technology didn't exist, so people were happy with what they knew, and the cartography was efficient for their needs. Okay? Cartography is another way that we represent what we think we know about the Earth. Is another art form, and it worked for them. Then next. Okay. So this is the Mercator world map. This is a version of the end of the 16th century. So you see that the Renaissance has happened, and the cosmology is much more similar to what we know. The mapping of the Americas is not complete, and here too there's a little bit of confusion, a little bit of disproportion also here. But we have the two hemispheres. We have this knowledge that there are two sides because it's a ball. Okay? And consider the context that now this ball is now revolving around the sun in this constant orbit, and it's the third planet in the orbit of planets that revolve around the sun. So it's an entirely different sense of perception of the self. It's called cryoperception. The perception of the self now is that we are constantly in motion. Because it's still like this, but we're still moving, whether we want or not. So we may as well move. Okay? So you see how between first map and the second map is where this sort of revolution, this renaissance, this rebirth, this shift of the paradigm of knowledge, of what was certain, or was the basis of knowledge, happens. Next. So, how do we go from Ptolemy to Mercator? What was bad, what was good then becomes bad, and what was bad becomes good. So there is a change of value that is very significant. And this is a bit of a summary. In the Middle Ages, one value was conformity. This is a sin, don't do it. Okay, I won't do it. Conformity. The doctrine tells you what to do, and you simply obey. Now, in the Renaissance, the value is individualism. Why shouldn't I do it? I think I can do it. I'm going to try to do it. I want to take the risk of doing it. Individualism. I am free. I can invent, create myself, invent the way I want to do it. Doctrine. Oh, look at this book. It tells that it's this. It's like this. So this is what you should believe. Why? Because this is a sacred scripture. It can't be wrong. But then, with the values of the Renaissance, you have activism. I want to take the risk of changing. I want to actively transform because I am already in motion anyway. So what's the point of not trying not to change? Everything is changing all the time. Next. Okay. So we start with an image of what is today a mosque in Istanbul and was built as the Cathedral of Constantinople, the famous Second Rome at the time of Justinian in the 6th century when Justinian wanted to reunite the Eastern and the Western Empire. We start with this because Byzantium, that survives Rome for 1,000 more years with the Eastern Roman Empire, 1,000 extra years, represents this continuity between antiquity and modernity. The only thing of the West that remains continuous. So this is Saint Sophia, which is now a mosque because Istanbul is a Muslim city. Next, we see some of the interiors. We remember Justinian's effort to reunite the empire, which lasted only a few years. And we see that he, with Saint Sophia, he really creates the second Rome. He builds a basilica, a cathedral of imperial import. You see some of the pictures. And we also see the composite nature of Byzantine art. It really is a synergy of all the styles. And we also see some of the Byzantine art. Mosaic was a technique. Remember the Greek statue of the Discobolus, the one who's throwing the disc, that perfect disc thrower is like this. Remember? That perfect, ideal, athletic youth. Remember the various Venuses you see, the various Apollos. Compare them. These people who know nothing about their bodies, they could very well be made of wood, for all we know. And the faces are not very individualized either. The only thing that makes a difference if you have a status, denoted by a crown, an areola, or a different kind of clothing. So we see a society that is quite hierarchical, it just keeps unto itself. It's not really looking onto some perfection. Next. Then we have some images of Islamic art. A major principle of Islam is that you never ever represent the divine or anything that might, refer to it. Okay? So that Islamic art, if you remember how extensive Islam is from the 7th century to the 8th, 9th century. So Islamic art dominates, but it's never representation. So what it specializes in is decoration. It becomes extremely elaborate, both in the architectural forms and in the decorative aspect. It becomes very, very elaborate. And you can see next. See, it becomes almost like a lace, like bordar, huh? Okay. It's never representation. It's the basic principle of Islam. And remember that the numbers that we use are Arab numbers, right? It's really a mathematician's perfection. It's completely geometrically perfect and very, very detailed. Next. Here we have an example of a fortification of an Islamic city. Next. And we have some more of that lace, even more elaborate. So you see that the technique is very sophisticated, but there is no attempt to represent humanity or any form of the divine. Next. And more of that honeycombs of that decoration. Next. So then we come to sort of a staple of medieval culture, and it is the cathedral. Okay? We want to look at it architecturally. To see that the whole effort is to go up. Okay? Remember the concept of the Middle Ages, that the only love that is good for you comes from that famous omnipotent deity that is beyond the fixed stars and is constantly observing. So there's this kind of, that this desire to reach out for heaven, this suction from heaven. This is where the love you feel should come. have to ignore everything that surrounds you, but you also have to be very clean inside. So you have to go within and expurgate any impurities that you might have. So light is filtered so that you can focus like that. Yes, next. Okay, this is another example of a medieval cathedral. Many of them are in France. It's a Gothic cathedral. You can see the decorative aspect, similar to Islamic art. Different styles, but also much like a lace. Okay, next. And another interior with this filtered light that creates a special atmosphere of connected with the heavens. Next. Another aspect of the Middle Ages, of the art of the Middle Ages, is this focus on the monstrous, focus on what is semi-human or is a deformation of different animals matched together that don't really exist in nature. Okay? And remember that for the medieval mentalities, monstrosity is a symbol of evilness, of sin, of something bad. Okay? But there's a focus on that. In other words, you cannot completely eliminate it. So every cathedral has these sort of sculptures that represent that, this attractive, this calamity toward, this gravitation toward this monstrosity. Next. Here's another example. And if you remember Minos, for example, in Dante's Inferno, it's like some deformation of some mythological thing that now represent the form of evil that can be controlled in one way or another. Next. This is an art related to the Crusades. We remember that the cadets, the younger sons who were not going to inherit, they could become monks, or they could go in these sort of makeshift armies to supposedly liberate the Saint Sepulchre, the tomb of Jesus in Palestine, and often did all kinds of things. So this is one of the themes of the art of the time, is